Alright, so first thing is the Beanifesto, which we have obviously communicated a bunch about, and then Rob drops that in there. And I'm gonna ping more in the Scribe channel because I want to see if we can kind of get some input and thoughts about what people want to see out of this post. Obviously, we're going to be covering everything to do with Mayflower, and trying to explain it in the most Beanstalk impactful way and kind of simple terms and everything like that, and making sure that it's really accessible for anyone who's coming across it. It's obviously a huge deal having a bunch of these updates um, all in one place, so we don't want to be overwhelming in terms of stuff for a lot of people that might be coming and checking out Beanstalk for the first time in a while. So that's kind of the tone that I'm envisioning. And yeah, I want to kind of see um, some other people's thoughts from Beanstalk from the community, um, and kind of yeah, just get a little temperature check on how we're going to approach that. So if you think I don't know, the best idea is to ping in the Scribe channel, and see if we can get people's thoughts from there, or I can bring it up briefly in the DAO meeting tomorrow as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, we're gonna kind of start getting to work on that. If you've had a chance to look at the outline and fully approve it, and some other eyes on it, um, but yeah, that's kind of where we're at there. Rob, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I definitely like what you were saying, Joey, about getting some community feedback, just on anything that the general Beanstalk community would like to see in the post. The version I dropped in the Scribe chat is open for anyone to comment on. So, yeah, if you go through it and you see something that you want to have maybe emphasized or anything you think's missing or just some general ideas for the article, we're always open to that kind of feedback. And I can go through like the general structure of the piece. You want me to just I can just share my screen and go through the outline real quickly. I know, Guy, we already kind of talked over the points, and I think we're pretty much set there as far as the things we absolutely have to cover and kind of the order of importance, but I can just talk a little bit about this
Yeah,
the piece.
yeah, run through that, just for people that haven't had a chance to get a detailed explanation.
All right. How's that looking? Screen share all good?
Yep.
Looks good here.
Okay, great. So yeah, starting with the purpose, it's gonna be an overview of what's coming to Beanstalk in the near future. And I think another point, I know, Guy, you mentioned this on one of our recent calls, is to kind of emphasize how strong Beanstalk has been able to recover from the exploit. And, that's not something that just any project would be able to do. There's a reason that the community and the Beanstalk Farms team has been working so hard. It's because, this can be a really impactful project for DeFi and yeah, I just think it's super cool, and more people need to know about the hard work that's being done here. So that's going to be kind of a secondary theme in the post. But just as far as structure goes, it's going to start with just the main points of the Mayflower update. Sunrise changes, Silo V3, and Basin. And for each of these, we're going to start off with the timeline for how things are going to come into play with all the BIPs, audits, and implementation stuff. So yeah, I have the timeline down here, but each section will include an overview of that at the start, and then we'll get into kind of the details of each of these upgrades and why they're important for Beanstalk. What impact it should have, as far as the different efficiencies that are going to be realized, stuff pertaining to the peg, especially as far as the changes for unripe bean conversions, and the Basin stuff is going to be, yeah, kind of the same thing. The issue that it solves, as well as wider use cases. The multi-block MEV issue is definitely something really cool that's not being tackled, at least that I've seen, by a lot of projects. So yeah, just kind of the unique aspects of Beanstalk and how the Mayflower update's going to really, you know, change things up, push Bean in the right direction, and yeah, we're gonna have some good graphics in there just to kind of show, what the roadmap looks like, where we're gonna be going, and when we expect to get there. And we'll have some more infographics spun up for stuff like Basin that shows kind of the structure of it and everything like that. But that's the general idea for the piece right there. And yeah, like I said, anyone who has any comments that they'd like to share with us, go ahead and click on that link in the Scrib chat and yeah, leave us a comment. And any questions right now as well.
Yeah, if anyone has, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you're gonna drop it in the channel to ask for feedback, I would ask for it. Say like, hey, taking any feedback from the community on this for the next 48 hours or something like that. 'Cause I know you dropped the link, but
Yeah, I'll write a little message to make that clear. Should I like tag anything?
what do you mean?
I don't know, like tag like at everyone, or I don't know. That's probably not a good idea, but
That seems a little bit over the top, but
yeah.
I feel like probably most people who would be interested in providing input are probably tuned into the channel. So
Okay, I'll leave a little message in there right now.
I mean, if you get nothing, it is what it is. But
yeah, that's fine. I mean, if we get nothing, I can assume that it's mostly good, or people don't really have feedback. But yeah, I'll put a little message in there.
Yeah, if anyone wants to jump in at some point during the meeting about this, just go ahead. But yeah, I'll probably briefly mention it tomorrow at the end of the meeting if that's cool. Just a reminder. But yeah, still scheduled to get this out on Monday the 15th, and that's kind of what we're going to be working on rest of this week, next week, in terms of long form stuff. In terms of social update, so we have a guy that is going to be coming on and helping out a lot with kind of memes and reply stuff. We're having a meeting internally at the end of this week that we're going to be really getting that kind of on par and outlining a plan for how we want to get a little bit more reach, because we're getting there in terms of followers, somewhat. We're getting to a point where we can start kind of reaching out and getting a little bit more growth. So we want to take advantage of that, get involved in replying to stuff, quote tweeting things, and yeah, kind of continuing to expand beyond the Bean community. And then the educational threads, we still have some stuff going out over the next couple of weeks. We got a market thread, one's going out tomorrow, and then a fertilizer thread will be coming out. So those are on the calendar. Still the normal kind of announcement, engagement, everything along those lines, memes. But yeah, we're going to be really trying to outline a little bit more replying and quote tweeting and things of that nature. So as usual, if anyone wants to see anything specific from the social channels, we're always looking for feedback, hoping to continue to utilize any tweets that we can jump in the conversation of via the Twitter group that we have. But yeah, and then PR stuff. So we talked a little bit yesterday internally, and Ishan, jump in here if there's anything to add, but pretty much I wanted to bring up the discussion that we had last time about kind of the Beanstalk is still here. Here's where Beanstalk is at today. That kind of PR pitch. And I know that initial thoughts was concern about kind of the language of that and maybe a little bit too much emphasizing the past and not really being in line with Beanstalk's ideology and exactly what is trying to be achieved. But I personally think that it's something that we should work to maybe try to align with that and see where we can fit it in with a PR strategy, because there was obviously the New York Times article that had got brought up post-hack, and it was discussing at the very end, here's kind of what's going on. Like, it's relaunching. They're trying to find a path forward. There's investigation about the missing funds, yada, yada, and all those details. And I feel like there still is kind of a space to bring that up again. I know that's something as an outsider I would be interested in reading if I came across that. So I think that there's probably a lot of people that would feel the same. And yeah, I just wanted to see kind of where we could pin down what language we need to either avoid, what language we need to emphasize in terms of trying to get some sort of campaign about here's where Beanstalk is today. Like, this is a DAO that has worked hard over the past 12 months to stay afloat and continue to progress towards building this decentralized algorithmic stable. And like kind of maybe bring in a little bit of what's to come. But yeah, just, I mean, highlighting and appreciating the fact that there's still a lot of stuff going on. And now that the Mayflower is on the schedule and the announcements are coming out with both the post that came out last week and then the Beanifesto that'll be coming out soon. Those are tangible things now that can be pointed to by this kind of PR push. So if anyone has thoughts on that, Guy, Ishan, PR team, yeah, feel free to jump in. But those are kind of my thoughts around that.
Yeah, Kyle, feel free to hop in and share any of the other kind of pitches and stories we're working on. I know we're working on one with on multi-block MEV.
Yeah, no, we have a couple pitches in mind. Yeah, just thinking about this Beanstalk is still here idea that Joey just threw out as well. Yeah, I mean, it's just we're trying to think of how we can positively spin, you know, like a Mayflower kind of metaphor of like going from a new place, from an old place to a new place. Like there's this kind of thought and flow in the logic that we could play with, as in like you've embarked and are arriving to like a new evolution of what's happening with the project. And so, yeah, we're just trying to think. I think what Joey's asking is what we're trying to think of is what would Beanstalk as a community not want us to highlight when we're pushing that idea. And we can definitely go into some of the other ideas as well.
And maybe it would be helpful, Guy, if we created a kind of word outline and a little bit of kind of, yeah, phrasing language that would be used and stuff we should focus on. But yeah, curious if on your thoughts, if this is something that can be pursued, should be pursued or avoided. Just because I know the initial thoughts were kind of the phrasing behind it maybe wasn't ideal.
Specifically, if what should be pursued among all the things you're talking about?
The Mayflower, or kind of Beanstalk is still here. Here's this upgrade that is coming that's going to kind of completely change the trajectory of where things have been the past few months. That, and Kyle, fill in if I missed the mark on that, but
yeah, I think it's more of like just what language we should try and avoid if we're gonna like refer to the hack in referring to the past of Beanstalk. Like, what type of language would you prefer we use if we're gonna refer to the past occurrences of Beanstalk? If we want to go and proceed with this style of a pitch, with this angle of a pitch, to pitch the project as making this sort of evolution from the past to its new future, using like Mayflower as like a metaphor as well within that. What language should we be using when we're referring to the past?
Hard for me to say off the top of my head. I mean, at some level, defer to you guys on this sort of stuff, but I would just say, I don't know if I have any thoughts on how to refer to the exploit. I mean, the exploit was bad. I feel like you can talk about it in a negative light. I would just say that, the state, it depends on who you ask, but if you ask me, the state Beanstalk in right now is very healthy. And even without the unripe seeds change, that is likely to have a significant effect on the peg. It could go without that for years if it needed to, while we implement, the rest of the economic improvements or low-hanging economic improvements. I say all this just to share like sort of how I think about it, which is that yes, the Mayflower is important and has a lot of upgrades that are necessary for Beanstalk to thrive long term, but it's not like the Mayflower is not recovering from some sort of broken or unrecoverable state or anything like that. Like Beanstalk's doing all right. So I don't know if that's helpful, but yeah, I mean, I don't know that I really have much to say about the exploit.
No, I think that is helpful.
Or that there's any particular language to avoid or anything like that on that front.
No, I think your angle there of saying that Beanstalk is like that's the angle we should take. I think is talking about how it's stable, or it's in a stable state.
And the
right?
other thing to highlight is like all the times Beanstalk has recovered from a more significant price deviation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other stablecoin attempt like Beanstalk, by the time it hit 90 cents, it was done for. Which is like almost all that needs to be said on that front. But beans have recovered from 25 cents, recovered from 75, 90 cents multiple times, and this is par for the course, I suppose. So again, not super related to what you were asking about the exploit, but hoping to give you guys some of the insight as to how to think about some of this stuff.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. Cool.
And I realize, like, when a new person looks at Beanstalk, it seems like it's not working. I can totally acknowledge that that's the reality of it, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay, Kyle, is any other or anyone else, Carla or Patrick, update on other pitches that you guys want to bring up?
Yeah, well, no, I mean, I think that explanation was helpful. Because we're asking, right, again, how to explain this evolution of the Mayflower update, and it's what guys, and just correct me if I'm wrong, but what guys saying is Beanstalk is coming from a stable place, right? Like what we should be highlighting is that it's as he says, it's par for the course. It's not coming from this kind of unrecoverable state. And so that's kind of the language we should be using, is avoiding talking about like this. It is an unstable, not working. If you look at it at first glance, as Guy points out, it's not working. So try and avoid that type of language of like it's any sort of reference to like dysfunction or like a broken protocol, that sort of thing. It's like that's the type of language we should avoid. We should be talking about using language like it's stable, using language like it's working, it's doing what it's supposed to do. That's what I think we should highlight.
Yeah, I think what I would think like words more like using like resilient,
Totally.
battle tested, things like that. Does that kind of hit the tone?
Yeah, I think you guys are saying all the right things. Extracting the insight from what I wasn't able to provide, but this is how it should work. So this is great.
Yeah, I don't
I had
know.
one more thing I was going to add, but I forgot. Keep going.
I was going to say, apart from apart strictly from the Mayflower updates, is a angle that we've been working on fleshing out is focusing on the DAO governance, like it's a DAO governed decentralized protocol, really baked into the DNA of the project. I guess, and this doesn't have to be now, but if there's any like unique features about the DAO that separate it from some other stablecoin protocols, that kind of information would be really helpful as we pursue that narrative.
Well, I mean, there's potentially a lot to say on this front, like the fact that it is it's becoming increasingly hard to change Beanstalk. It looks like these couple bips will pass, but it is typically like requires a huge community effort to get these sort of upgrades over the line, which is a feature, not a bug per se, because one could argue that there's sort of if Beanstalk is to be this like foundational base layer of money, it should be harder and harder to change with time. So that's one thing. So I guess like the insight would be like, much higher thresholds for quorum or change than I've seen in other protocols. What else? I mean, we really
like the DAO is maturing, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a great way to put it.
I think that ties into the stabilization of it as well. In one of the quotes that Publius gave in the media request I gave last week for the Blockster article that we're writing, he basically said that drastic changes in any sort of monetary policy is really unstable. Just thinking of the Federal Reserve right now and like changing interest rates on banks like that totally effed up a lot of people's balance sheets, right? So like drastic changes like that are bad, and so that's an angle we can definitely take too. That this feature, not a bug type thing, that like this is good for Beanstalk. Monetary policy that's difficult to change, that sort of angle is a positive of this protocol.
Well, not just that it's difficult to change, but that it's autonomous.
Okay.
So the DAO is not deciding what the interest rate for lending to Beanstalk is, but it codifies up front, hey, here's the algorithm that decides how the interest rate changes every hour. The interest rate being the temperature in the case of Beanstalk. And on a related note, this is sort of what I was saying, like, Beanstalk would be fine without making this unripe seeds change. And it's sort of not a good precedent to set in some ways anyway, because in a lot of ways, setting the seeds for BDV rewards for these assets
definitely
is setting monetary policy, which should be avoided. It would be like, a comparable scenario would be if the DAO decided to say, hey, let's cut the temperature in half because we feel like it, or because of XYZ reasons. And so fortunately, the temperature already has, an autonomous deterministic system for changing and reacting to market conditions such that it doesn't need to be set manually. But a similar solution known as the gauge system in the future is not in place to have the seed rewards dynamically update based on market conditions. So currently the DAO, every time a new token is added to the silo. So for example, we'll add the Bean ETH well, hopefully this quarter, and that'll get whitelisted in the silo so that it can receive stock and seed rewards. So when that happens, the DAO will have to decide how many stock and seeds it gets, which again is like setting monetary policy, which is sort of a necessary evil at the moment because there's no autonomous system, but the goal would be to not need to do that in the future. This is a long-winded way of saying that making the unripe seeds equal is not ideal in a lot of ways.
Okay.
But, you know, based on a bunch of community discussion, etc., it seems like a lot of the community would be significantly in favor of doing so.
Right on. Well, I mean, I think this is very helpful. There's a lot of angles I think we can play off on just the DAO here. And maybe we can get some feedback even from the DAO on what angles we might take. I mean, we're also thinking of doing an MEV type angle where we understand that, you know, the pools in the base index are going to be built with this type of resistance that like other projects or other foundations and even other dexes and protocols are just like kind of acquiescing to and kind of just acknowledging that it's going to be a thing, that these types of like flash bot or like bot attacks are going to be you know, taken or they're just going to happen. So that's something we want to highlight as well. And yeah, if anybody has anything to say on that, that would be great to just kind of understand it a little bit more. Yeah.
Sorry about, could you restate the question?
Just understanding the significance behind building your decks and building the pools with MEV resistance, where what and this was something Patrick discovered in his research, was that just other places across DeFi, essentially, like I think he noted that the Ethereum Foundation has like a policy of just allowing these attacks to happen, and that there are dexes out there that will just like have it built in that they'll just refund people when they're front run. So I don't know. There's just something that we're trying to hit there, and we just want to make sure that we do it correctly. Hit on that angle of what the significance is behind that.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like the approach seems to me to be different with when you look at like flash bots, and they're like, well, we'll just if somebody put these things out and to bid, or you have different options where they just refund you the money lost, and it's not even like the hacks, but just your normal transactions, where people can jump in front of the queue, and so they decided, well, we'll just refund people the extra gas or whatever, rather than baking these solutions right into the protocol itself.
Well, so the Oracle solution of Basin, called pumps, are specifically built to be multi-block MEV resistant, not MEV resistant. And the difference is sort of in the name, that the attack or the MEV happens over the course of multiple blocks. And it is rather limited who can perform such attacks. Such an attack could only be performed by a validator or a block proposer. And so with the switch to proof of stake Ethereum, block proposers or validators now know some amount of time in advance when they'll be proposing a block. And similarly, so like at a high level, there's an algorithm that decides who is the block proposer among all the validators based on their percent stake. And on occasion, that can mean that a proposer or validator can end up proposing multiple blocks in a row. And so if they're proposing multiple blocks in a row and they know that they're proposing multiple blocks in a row, they have the ability to perform attacks that were not risk-free previously because they can control the ordering of transactions over the course of multiple blocks. And so primarily the attack vector is that can really fuck up time-weighted average price oracles. So think about how, so Beanstalk, in order to determine how many beans to mint, measures the time-weighted average price of a bean over the previous hour. If you do a single block MEV attack where you increase the bean price to infinity, but it lasts for 0 blocks because it goes to infinity and it goes back to 1 within a single block, that doesn't affect the time-weighted average price at all because the price of infinity did not last even 1 block. But the point of multi-block MEV is that you would be able to persist that price of, again, theoretically infinity for at least 1 block. And if you have a price of infinity for 1 block, even if there's, let's see, I mean, how many blocks would there be in an hour? Over 300 blocks. Even if the price is only infinity for 1 out of 300 blocks in an hour, that would really corrupt the average price. So this is all to say that existing oracles and dexes like Curve and Uniswap were not built with this in mind, and Pumps/Basin are.
No, I may be wrong about this, but I believe, I think in a previous call, you guys had talked about maybe some other dexes were going back or protocols were going back and using off-chain solutions to try to band-aid this. Is that right?
Yeah,
like using
that's a good call out. I believe Publius was referring to the fact that new protocol devs, like people building new protocols that require oracles, because of this attack vector, are shying away from using the oracles, the on-chain oracles and existing dexes because of this attack vector, and are thus opting to use solutions like Chainlink that are not on-chain and less censorship resistant.
Cool.
And so the goal of Pumps/Basin is to, not need to do either of those things. To have a, totally censorship resistant and multi-block MEV resistant oracle that's on-chain, not off-chain.
Okay. Well, no, that's super helpful too. Definitely. I guess some of the last couple things here. We're working on podcast pitching as well. Patrick's been doing a good job reaching out, trying to get that going. As well as we also wanted to know about events. If you guys were interested in going to any events, or what types of locations you would be wanting to go to if you were interested in events, like potentially like speaking opportunities. Yeah, because I think it was like one of your community members brought it up, I think in the chat. So yeah, we were just curious what types of events and those types of speaking opportunities we could look out for as as we look for these opportunities across the whole year, the whole world, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's a good question. I feel like the person most appropriate to do those speaking opportunities would be Publius and not myself. So hard to speak for them really on their preferences front. Although I would say, I feel like in general, they're, it's sort of like the more people we can share Beanstalk with, the better. For example, like a Twitter Spaces where 10 people show up does not seem super value added, but if there's some in-person event and they can talk about Beanstalk to 100 people or whatever. I think they're much more interested in those kind of opportunities where they can share it with more people. So I know that's very vague and probably not a very specific answer to your question, but would have to ask them directly for more color.
Okay.
Yeah, we're working from like a big master list of events, and we're trying to narrow them down, so that we have something to work with. Do you know, like, in one main way is like, geographic restrictions? So like, do you know if Publius, like, if they're based in Chicago or New York or something, if those would have more appeal than, say, Turkey or Singapore?
It's really hard for me to say. Let's ask them.
Cool. Yeah, we can just circle back and ask them later. That's all I have for PR. I don't know if Carla or Patrick have anything else.
I did want to chat about BD. So like we had mentioned yesterday, we had reached out to Silo Finance, and I dropped in the message about in one of our DMs about not having enough oracles to be able to use like borrow lending protocols. Is there a way where either we can, I don't know, like either have another way to pull price down, because this is also something we've heard from CoinMarketCap. I don't know what guy. I mean, what are your thoughts on general on like the Bean price oracle?
Well, I'm not sure I understand exactly what the problem is. I mean, in the case of something like CoinMarketCap, where it doesn't really need to be, like a incredibly manipulation resistant oracle, like they just want like some price feed to read. There is a contract that provides that data. When we had, I wasn't super deep in this when it happened, but believe that we had kind of badgered them for like quite a while to use that contract, the price contract, rather than reading from the curve pool. And they didn't ever update it. So then we just decided to take it down, if I remember correctly. But on the more like an oracle for borrowing and lending stuff, I really am not sure. Nor am I sure that that's worth investing in, given that I'm not sure how important it is to be able to like borrow and lend beans themselves rather than like deposited value in the silo.
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think like Silo typically does like liquidity incentives. So then there's like, that extra, and I think like there's probably people that don't want to sell beans, but probably want to collateralize them to get dollars.
Can you describe what the protocol does? So you mentioned CoinMarketCap, but what was the other thing?
Oh, Silo Finance. They're like a fuse pool, like individual borrow lending market, permissionless borrow lending market, kind of like Euler.
So what would the desired integration with Beans be?
Creating a market where users can borrow lend Bean.
I mean, and that's also one of the other questions we were pondering over is like if there's anything specifically that we should be targeting, because that's kind of one of the main things that we came up with that would be worth pursuing and viable to pursue as lending markets for Bean. But if there's anything else or any thoughts behind that, that's kind of also what we were wanting to figure out today.
Yeah, like we literally went through basically, like, we have a list of basically every type of project that's out there, every project that's out there, and we've even gone through like everything that's on CoinGecko, and we were like, what protocols are out there that are on mainnet that we can have some kind of Bean partnership and integration with? And we literally went through like everything that's possibly out there, and the list came back pretty small.
Yeah, I feel like I got no juice here, or as insight. I mean, one interesting thing that was happening pre-exploit was there's some protocol called Fiat DAO, and they were working on enabling people to borrow pods. But now my understanding is Pharos is working on something similar. That was one of the more recent Beansprout proposals. So that's happening, as far as I know. But yeah, so guys, I don't know that I have much value to add here. Maybe this would be something interesting to ask Publius, or I can try to think of who. Maybe Manifold would be someone interesting to ask about this, given that he was doing a lot of the Beansprout type of work last year. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Interesting. Yeah, we can reach out to Manifold. Is there like a point of contact for Beansprout? Like, who's kind of running that ship?
No one's running it. Manifold was running it, and now he doesn't. And the last couple of Beansprout proposals were just because there were some leftover beans from when it was funded last year. So that was what people were using the money for, the intelligence on chain work and stuff like that. But no one runs it.
Yeah, Joey. What I'm thinking is maybe if you could drop a message in the Scribe chat, and maybe we can make a thread or something, and ask community if they have any thoughts on different BD integrations.
Yeah, that seems like a great idea.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do that. Sounds good. Cool. Anything else?
Also,
that's
you
all
could
that
maybe
I had.
ask that same question at the DAO meeting tomorrow, if you'll be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I will. Cool. I didn't have anything else. Ishan, all good?
Yeah, all good from my end. Appreciate the time, guy.
Oh, was gonna, and apologies, I know we've already moved these calls once, but was gonna ask if you guys would be open to moving this right before the DAO meeting on Thursdays. Like, call it, that'd be 11 a.m. Central. Or sorry, yeah, that would be 11 a.m. Central. Just a little bit more convenient on this end to do those back to back, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to let me know right now, but just wanted to float that. I can send you guys a message about it too.
Okay. Yeah, it's good for me, but I'll have to make sure with everyone else. So I'll get back to you on that.
Cool. That's all I got.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, PR team, for all the details. And yeah, we'll I'll follow up with some stuff in the DAO meeting tomorrow. And yeah.
Sweet. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks,
thank you.
everyone.
Cool. Thank you.